Good evening, everybody. Again, welcome back, Spartan Nation Radio. We're going to do two segments this week with the great coach Chuck Renier, legendary State of Michigan high school football and basketball coach. Also, just so you know, sturgeon fear him. I'm not kidding, folks. When a baby sturgeon bursts out of that egg, the first thing he sees is his mom and dad holding a picture of Chuck Renier, and it says, "When Chuck's near the water, we run to dry land. We take our risks on dry land." Coach, how are you?
I'm just great.
I got to tell you, when I saw that picture, that video of you catching that sturgeon that Becky sent me, I loved it.
Yeah, that was really unexpected. That was a lot of fun, and of course, you got to put those back in. You can't keep them, but that was really exciting on the tip-off.
How did he fight?
Oh, it was tremendous. He did about 10 runs on me, so we kept thinking it was a pike or a muskie, but it was a surprise when he came up through that ice.
That's the one thing I love about ice fishing is you just never know what's coming up through the hole. All right, Coach, let's turn our attention to basketball. You know, the team is struggling, there's no doubt, but I think there are a lot of reasons why. Your overall thoughts on Michigan State basketball?
Well, number one reason, the youngsters have when we last talked about basketball, there was a couple good games there where the youngsters, and I'm talking about Gabe Brown and Bingham and Hall and the group there, Marble. They were starting to take a step forward, and it looked like that they were going to become threats each time that they touched the ball. And that was early in the Big Ten season when we were seeing some of that. And from that time to now, they haven't really made any progress from that point. So a lot of the problem that Michigan State is having right now is the ball is in Winston's hand, and they kind of move around to try to get him open, but they're not trying to get the other players involved offensively, other than Tillman, who basically is a putback guy or the occasional dump down inside and a move or two to the hoop. So that's what defenses are concentrating on, giving Winston a hard time, and as we saw in the last game there against Maryland, they have to work so hard to get Winston a chance to dish or to throw or to make the shot, that when it gets down to crunch time at the end of the game, Winston's really fatigued at that time. So that's kind of my observations, that when I watch the game, when Winston gives the ball up, let's just throw a name out there, to Gabe Brown, if he's not wide open, then the ball's coming back. And so you just kind of cover up and pressure those guys to the outside. And Aaron Henry he seems awful reluctant to be a star. As much talent as you have, he seems reluctant to be a star, not the star, but a star on this team. So you got to get the young guys more involved instead of just the occasional passes and trying to get Winston open. So that's kind of my observation so far.
Coach, I want to ask you a pretty interesting question, but Rocket Watts to me is a guy who's not afraid to be the star, and he's quickly making his case to be the third star that Izzo's been crying out for.
Yeah, I think of the new guys coming in and the guys that are coming off the bench, Watts is the one that is making that move forward. It's a new game for him. He makes a few mistakes, as you saw against Maryland. Plays really well, but at the end there, he made a couple defensive mistakes, and that resulted in one or two of those 3-pointers that were shot and made at the end of the game. But he's really coming along, and he's another kid that has an immense amount of talent, and it looks like with him, he is taking advantage offensively where the other players aren't. When he gets the ball, he is looking to shoot, whereas the other players don't seem to be doing that. So Watts is really coming along, and his defense is picking up. But again, this is a freshman, a young one, and he's learning as he goes along.
Coach, I want to ask you, because I think it's a fair question, Marcus Bingham, he can't play for long stretches of time because of his health, because of his conditioning. That's got to get better. And I like Marcus a lot. I think Marcus is a great kid. I think he has the potential to be a great player. But what does Marcus have to do other than gain weight and get his conditioning up to get in there on a regular basis?
Well, Marcus and like a few of those other younger players in there, I think there's a maturity also issue, in my opinion, anyway. He's 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan, and he has a tendency to play like he's 6 foot, and he just doesn't seem to use his height and his length as a determiner against other players. Kind of like lets things happen. I was watching a special the other day on the Big Ten channel, and they were talking about a team that Rutgers had back a few years ago. And one of the quotes one of the players had was, "Every game we went in there to beat you." And with the young kids out there in Michigan State right now, a Hall and a Marcus Bingham and Marble and Gabe Brown, the ones that are seeing a lot of action at this time, they appear to me to go in and want to play basketball. They're not in. It doesn't appear to me that they're trying to beat you, which is a big difference. Now, I have some young people up here where I live that are playing basketball right now, and when I talk to them, I ask them how they did, and when they played their games, I scored so many points. And then I asked the question, being an old basketball coach, how many points did the guy that you played against get? And they look at me kind of puzzled, and that's the idea that I'm talking about. They were out there playing basketball, and instead of going out there and dominating a team or dominating a player and shutting them down and beating them by shutting them down and then getting your points. And there's a big difference there, and I see that a lot in Gabe Brown. I see that a lot in Marcus Bingham, and they just have to go out there and stop people and create their offense off of their defense, and with the idea that we're going to beat you, we're not going to play basketball. That's just my humble opinion on that one, but I think it's a maturity thing. I think it's a way that you approach the game, and like Izzo used to say a long time ago, you got to love the game, and part of that love is to beat people. So,
Coach,
it's a big difference between wanting to play basketball and wanting to beat people.
Last question from me on basketball with you. We're talking to the great coach Chuck Renier. I was visiting with one of the Spartans who plays in the NBA over the All-Star break, just spending a little bit of time with him. And we were talking about this team, and he said something I'll never forget. He said it literally looks like there are 12 guys standing around watching Xavier and Cassius try to win a ball game. And he said there just needs to be a group of guys that say we can't wait for them to do it all. He wasn't ripping his teammate. I mean, the Spartans, he loves them, but it was just an honest assessment. It looks like a bunch of people waiting for them. Your thoughts?
Exactly. When you see Michigan State with the basketball, they come across at midcourt, and the first thing you see are the ball screens at the top of the key, and back and forth, and Winston looking to do something, and then he'll pass it off once in a while, or Tillman will make he'll slide down towards the rim, and that's basically what it is. It's either Winston's going to get the shot, the layup on the top of the screen, while we stand on the periphery and get the ball and pass it back to him. But yeah, that's basically Winston, Tillman trying to be the offense, and the other guys just being observers on the floor. So that's what I was kind of talking about, where, when you get a Gabe Brown, or I'm not trying to make abusive statements, but if you get a Gabe Brown and he gets the ball back, it's right back to Winston. And you got to be a factor out there. So I had to watch the Wisconsin game last night, and their guys out there on the perimeter, when the ball came to them, it was time to snap ball to head towards the rim. If they were open, take the shot. How many times have you seen Izzo have a fit on the sideline there when we got an open player and they don't shoot? That's it in a nutshell. You got to be an active player. You can't be 2-on-5 all the time. You got to be 5-on-5.
He's the great coach Chuck Renier, the good, the bad, and the ugly with Spartan Hoops. The bad and the ugly with